foundational key to success. Pablo Picasso. We're about to see massive disruption. Please keep your friends and family aware. Like, subscribe, share these videos. Please remember I am not a financial advisor.
But I think there is a sense that perhaps you can have a strong economy without necessarily pegging to any other currency, whether that's the yuan, the dollar, whatever it is. And is that more possible now if you, as a country, kind of embrace these opportunities? It seems to me like a reasonable experiment. So I think that's probably part of what you're seeing.
Sheila Warren is from the World Economic Forum, and she's discussing digital currencies. Fiat is tied to fiat. When you see a dollar drop, it's in relation to every other currency. When you see the euro gain strength, it's because the dollar is dropping. When the dollar is stronger, it puts pressure on every other economy in this world. Untying fiat would be the level playing field. What if our currencies weren't tied? To untie fiat to fiat, they would need an asset that's not fiat. She said if they embrace the opportunities, it seems like a reasonable experiment.
Last year, the G20 asked the Financial Stability Board to coordinate the development of a roadmap on how the global community could enhance cross-border payments. It has long been acknowledged that the existing system, while safe and dependable, suffers from frictions, including processes that make it difficult to comply with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing requirements, difficulty in managing payments across time zones, and in certain areas, a reliance on outdated technology. Moreover, these frictions contribute to higher costs for cross-border transactions. As with many aspects of life these days, the COVID-19 pandemic has shined a light on the less efficient areas of our current payment system and accelerated the desire for improvement and digitalization. Even before the pandemic, advancements in the private sector served as a catalyst to get the attention of consumers and to prompt more engagement by the public sector. The goal of the FSB roadmap is simple: to create an ecosystem for cross-border payments that is faster, cheaper, more transparent, and more inclusive.
The G20, the FSB, the Fed are working on an open platform, an ecosystem for cross-border payments. Sheila says they're experimenting with untying fiat. Jerome says this is an ecosystem for faster cross-border payments. On March 18th, the Bank of International Settlements released a paper called Multi-CBDC Arrangements and the Future of Cross-Border Payments. There were 3 different models explored in this paper. You can clearly see where a jurisdictionless neutral bridge asset could come into play. The paper does not mention XRP. So what do we know? We know the central banks are moving forward with digital currencies. We know there is a war with Russia, China, Iran. We know the economy has too much debt. We know Ripple is partnered with the Bank of England and the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority. We know Interledger Protocol was explored by the ECB and the Bank of Japan. We know Ripple met with the People's Bank of China back in 2018. I suspect all of the world's economies want to untie their fiat. I suspect the next-gen financial system is being developed, and the globe has agreed on ILP as the foundation of the next-gen financial system.
On the last point first, do I see the U.S. embracing Bitcoin in the ways you're describing? I'm not so sure about that. But digital assets.
You don't think the Treasury is going to be out there buying Bitcoin?
Yeah, I don't know that we'd ever know, we put it that way, or that it would be permitted.
And maybe they already have.
Yeah, who knows, would it surprise you, So who knows? I certainly don't. And I think that, but on the digital assets, 100%. But on the digital assets, 100%. But on the digital assets, 100%.
Brad Garlinghouse was one of the first people to say we need to move away from the term cryptocurrency and start calling these digital assets.
But on the digital assets, 100%. I mean, I think you're already seeing these statements that, Jay Powell coming out and saying the digital dollar and looking at that as a priority, that's a pretty strong statement and quite different from things we've heard before. That's, of course, a reflection of 5 years of intense research the Fed's been doing into the topic, some of which we help facilitate, some connections and things like that.
For 5 years, the Fed has been researching digital currencies, some of which we helped facilitate. The World Economic helped facilitate the Fed's research on digital currencies. You may remember that Ripple is a partner of the World Economic Forum. Remember, in 2018, this PDF surfaced from Ashish Burlad states that in July, Ripple announced results of their collaboration with two of the world's leading central banks, the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England. Both have studied Ripple's blockchain solution to improve cross-border payments. For 5 years, think about all the lies and deceit you've heard over the last 5 years.
A year into the process, I'm encouraged that we are making meaningful progress. The Stage 3 report released in October laid out a practical set of steps for moving ahead on the 19 building blocks that will bring about an improved system. Indeed, the themes discussed in the 4 sessions of the conference today correspond well to approaches described in the building blocks. The title of the first panel sets up a choice between improving existing rails or laying new tracks. As the roadmap makes clear, one of the keys to moving forward will be doing both. Improving the existing system where we can, while also evaluating the potential of and the best uses for emerging technologies.
The Bank of Japan, the Bank of Canada, Riksbank, the ECB, the Swiss National Bank, the Bank of England, and the U.S. Federal Reserve are all working together on a digital currency project. These central banks are going to be the standard setters. And already we know the Bank of England is a RippleNet partner. We know the ECB and the Bank of Japan tested Interledger Protocol.
Explicitly about sanctions avoidance and SWIFT avoidance and those things. I mean, it may well be. It would surprise me a bit if it were that, targeted, apart from maybe like a couple of jurisdictions here and there, which, I think anything they can do to get away from the U.S. is not surprising. But I also think we can't underestimate, the sanctions effect it's had on countries, and their inability to engage in digital economy is quite profound. So if there are ways of circumventing that system, it seems logical to me that they would be exploring that, although I have no evidence that that's the case.
China, Russia, Iran have the natural resources, manufacturing, and labor to create a parallel trade system, one that is outside of the SWIFT system, and they can do this with digital currencies. Today, I can create my own crypto relatively easy. If our enemies decided to trade on their own platform, we would lose the reserve status of the dollar. Our allies will gravitate towards cheaper natural resources, towards cheaper products, and China and Russia can provide both. The solution is for the U.S. and allies to act faster, creating the new system, an inclusive, fair system.
Joe Biden once said Vladimir Putin had no soul. He maintains his view on the Russian leader.
You know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly.
Since taking office, Biden has said he will take a tougher stance on Russia than his predecessor.
The days of the United States rolling over in the face of Russia's aggressive actions, interfering with our elections, cyber attacks, poisoning its citizens, are over.
Biden's latest comments added to speculation that the US would hit Russia with fresh sanctions soon.
Digital identities, intellectual property, voting fraud, cyber attacks, blockchain is the solution to the problems we are seeing. As tensions heat, a trustless system is key to cooling off geopolitical conflict. The West needs to establish the rules before Russia, China, and North Korea break off and establish their own. We are starting to see this with China's CBDC.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control.
No nation can trust another nation's CBDC. The central banks, the governments have complete control. And this is where the neutral bridge asset comes into play.
Is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that.
Each nation can have a cryptographically secured walled garden that is governed by the nation. Nations can have their own walled gardens within a larger walled garden of allies. And the open system that hosts all walled gardens will allow enemies to transact without a need of trust. Private ledgers are fine if you can trust every party within the private ledger. However, we don't live in that world. The US is never going to be able to trust China or Russia or North Korea.
Addressing legal barriers to cross-border payments and harmonized data to oil the cross-border payments machinery highlight that improving the system must be a collaborative effort. By definition, cross-border payments involve multiple jurisdictions, so it will be only through countries working together via all of the international forums, the G7, the G20, the CPMI, the FSB, and others, that solutions will be possible. And finally, it is only by engaging all stakeholders, policymakers, private sector participants, and academia, as this conference is doing, that we will achieve the improved payments ecosystem we are striving toward. The COVID crisis has brought into even sharper focus the need to address the limitations of our current arrangements for cross-border payments. And as this conference amply demonstrates, despite the challenges of this last year, we still have been able to make important progress. I again thank the CPMI and John Cunliffe for their leadership and look forward to working together as we improve these payments for businesses and individuals alike. Thank you.
This technology offers them a way out of the mess that they have created. Technology is deflationary. Everything becomes more efficient, so I spend less for the same services. The central bankers love this idea because that allows them to inflate and counteract the deflation. Conflict arises between nations because of a lack of trust. A trustless system is coming. It's an olive branch. Everything you can imagine is real. Pablo Picasso. Thank you for liking, watching, and subscribing. If you enjoy my work and wish to support my channel, please consider joining my Patreon. If you want to support my channel without joining my Patreon, please share these videos.